Alright, y'all, so today I wanted to do a really quick review of Holland, the 19th studio album from the Beach Boys released at the beginning of 1973. This is a really interesting record, to say the least, and I've also heard a lot of positive things, and I definitely have some interesting things to say about it. Before I get deeper into this review, I'm going to give you my initial opinions, a little bit of background on this album, track by track opinion on the record, so to speak, and my overall opinions on Holland. So, going into this album, the Beach Boys had a bit of success with Surf's Up, which was their 1971 album, and it charted pretty decently for a band that came from the 60s, where a lot of similar bands were just not charting at all. And they had some success, and then they eventually made Carl and the Passions, which was a kind of a slap together record with new members of the band. I also forgot to mention that video, but Bruce Johnston had left the band by this point, so he wasn't involved with any of the recording. And their manager, Jack Riley, decided to basically move the entire band to Holland to create a new experience and get a new environment for the Beach Boys to basically make a real follow-up to Surf's Up. This, albeit, was a pretty disastrous decision, but they apparently moved in 1972 for a brief period of time in the summer to a barn near Amsterdam. And basically, the band members were kind of camped out there for a few months in pursuit of making songs, recording the album. But it turned out that was a pretty huge mistake, because moving all that equipment over there was very expensive, not cheap. I mean, you got to remember, this was the 1970s, before, laptops and snippets and the internet. Was a really costly venture, and to be honest with you, at the end of the day, it was kind of pointless, because most of the tracks were just recorded after many of the band members just felt homesick and decided to go back to LA, where they recorded most of the album's material in a studio there, even though some of the basic tracks were recorded in Holland, to be fair. So just a really weird thing, really deserves a video entirely in itself. But let's get into this. For my initial opinions, now, I've heard a lot of positive reviews of this album, and I'm going to be frankly honest with you. I do like this album. There's a lot of really, really great songs on this project, but it's a very strange record. It sometimes goes into very weird directions. There's certain songs that combine together, and then, like, over half the album is literally a fairy tale told, or always narrated by Jack Riley, and composed mainly by Brian. And it's called Mount Vernon and Fairway, and it's just a bizarre 12-minute kind of add-on to this album. And I think this album becomes very uneven as a result. It's not, in my opinion, a smooth experience from beginning to end, but there's a lot of really strong points and great songs on this album. So regardless, let's get into it. First, the album cover. I like it. It's pretty cool. It shows a bit of some of those famous houses that you see in Amsterdam, and a really cool ship. It almost looks like a steamboat. Kind of a little bit of a coincidence, considering one of the songs in this album is named Steamboat. But yeah, decent album cover. Nothing crazy. Now let's get into the tracks. First, we have Sail on Sailor. This was a track mainly written by Brian, and has vocals from one of the new members of the band, Blondie Chaplin. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's one of their best songs ever, period. I think Chaplin does an amazing job vocalizing it. Even though I would love to hear one of the core members of the Beach Boys attempt to take on this song, because, the new members that joined from Carl and the Passions would shortly leave after this album. But it's a really, really good track. A lot of people describe this as another Brian masterpiece, and that's very well could be the case, but it's a great track. I think it was released as a single, but it's a fantastic way to open the album, and opens it very strong. Love the lyrics, the chorus, the 70s feel to it. Really cool. And then we have Steamboat, another very strong track. The vocals done mainly by Carl here. Really, really great track, great material. The lyrics are great. I love the progression of the song, the tempo of the song. It's really good. And this is where then we have the next series of songs, which are I guess kind of a medley. There's a lot of medleys on this album, weirdly. It's called the California Saga, which is our essentially three songs, mainly done by Mike Love and a bit of Al Jardine and other people involved, composing these three tracks that were basically written as a response to their time in Holland. They felt homesick for California, so they wrote this. And together, it's an okay medley. I've heard better medleys from other albums, but it's pretty decent. The first third of it is Big Sur, which is a pretty good, kind of a decent song on its own. Opens up the medley, pretty song. Then we have the Beak of Eagles, which is like a huge spoken section of the song that kind of is a little bit of a take on environmentalism and nature and animals in California. And then we have the third and last part, which is probably the best part in my opinion, which is called California. Which it feels like a strange song because it feels like a lot of their earlier stuff, because it's talking about the sunny California and how California is so sunny and the weather and the beach and all those things that most people associate with the Beach Boys, but done in this very much abstract and funk and soul kind of style in the 70s with this album. But it's pretty good. I like it. It's a bit strange. There's like these weird like spoken parts of the lyrics where they're saying water and just like, I'm not sure. To me, it felt really weird. It felt like, is that a little bit of a takeaway or a bit from Smile? But it's a little bit of a strange medley. I'm not the hugest fan of it. I think the first one, Big Sur, and California are pretty good, but nothing crazy in anything that speaks to me. I've heard better versions of similar types of songs on previous albums, but still pretty solid. And then we have The Traitor, which is essentially a response to racism, kinda. Carl does a great job with this track. It's really good. Really enjoy it. I also almost forgot to mention, but Big Sur, back to the California medley. I know I'm kind of going back. I also really enjoy that track because of its country feel. I don't know why. Every time the Beach Boys attempt to do something country related, I feel like they actually kind of knock it out the park. I wouldn't mind if they attempted to do a country album. But back to The Traitor. The Traitor's a really good track. I really like it. It's more of the stronger side of the album, in my opinion. And then we have Leaving This Town, which is the very much soulful kind of style of song. It's very much rhythm and blues. It's got a slow tempo, but I think the lyrics are great. I think Chaplin does a really good job with the vocals. And it's one of my favorite songs. Like, I think Chaplin is a bit of the star on this album because every song that he usually contributes to with lead vocals, I think is a knockout, standout song. And Leaving This Town, while not a typical Beach Boys style of song, is really good. And it's got some great lyrics and it's talking about abandonment and leaving stuff and love. But it's a really, really good track. And then we have the Dennis Wilson, some of the Dennis Wilson tracks here. I think this is the only... Oh, beyond that, apologies. I think this is the only Dennis Wilson one, I think, on the album. No, apologies. Dennis contributed to writing-wise. He wrote a few of the songs, but I don't think he did vocals, but I could be mistaken. Actually, no, he did vocals on Steamboat. I apologize. That being said, this is mainly his kind of track, which is Only With You, and it's a beautiful song. It's another standout song on the album. It's very slow, the tempo, the rhythm, but the lyrics are really great. They're beautiful. They're so romantic. It's essentially talking about being with that partner, doing things only with you, so to speak. Fantastic track. I mean, fantastic Dennis-led track here. It's a standout on the album. And then we have Funky Pretty, which is one of the very few Brian Wilson contributions to this album because he doesn't really contribute too much. And I'm a bit mixed on this one. It's a little bit weird. The rhythm, the lyrics, I don't really mess with this one that much. It's not a horrible track. I don't think it's an absolute, horrible song. I think it's just a bit weaker on the side of the entire album. But yeah, it's pretty much, if you look at this album from actual material and songs, it really only has like 9 songs, and then basically the rest of the album is a 12-minute interlude, not interlude, but just epilogue with that Mount Vernon and Fairway fairy tale recreation. Um, which I'm gonna go into that. I was thinking about maybe doing a separate review for that, but I might not get around to it. Maybe for a deeper video later on. It's an okay track, I guess. It's an okay fairy tale. Jack Riley, I think the manager, does the vocals for it. He narrates it, which I think is a good choice. I think it was a bit bizarre that the manager was giving vocals to a Beach Boys album, but for stuff like this, it makes sense. I think that's fine. It's got some nice production throughout. When he's narrating throughout the entire story, there's certain sounds that kind of correlate with what he's saying, and there's some cool stuff, I guess. There's a pretty horrendous part where like the Pied Piper shows up in the fairy tale, and I think he's voiced by Mike Love, but with some awful effects. I just really cringed at a lot of that. But the tale, in my opinion, was a bit pointless. It's got some pretty cool themes, but I don't think it needed to be tacked on to the Holland album. I understand it was tacked on, but I think in future releases they should have just really made this separate, because it really has no business being on the Holland album. But yeah, overall, kind of excluding my opinions with the fairy tale section, the Mount Vernon section, it's a pretty decent album. It's got some fantastic singles and songs on this one. Sail on Sailor is fantastic. Only With You and Leaving This Town are probably my top 3 favorite, but there's also Steamboat, and certain portions of the California Saga are pretty solid. But I feel like it's a little bit uneven of an album, and there's a lot of mixed songs here, songs that don't really hit the same. There's certain songs that could have been a lot better, but they just unfortunately not, and you just get the little bit of a bizarre portion of the album, which is the fairy tale section that's tacked on. So while I do enjoy this album, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag for me personally. I have heard better Beach Boys records and albums overall, and I think they could have done a little bit better. But there are some great songs on this album, regardless. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Holland. Hopefully you have a good day, and peace, y'all.